So you want to be a tank, huh? You decided you want to play the role of a father, huh? Spending all your time babysitting brain-dead children in your party and taking full responsibilities for their failures? Yeah, you want to be the juggernaut in the front lines, smashing people into the ground and preventing them from even playing the game? Then you've come to the right place. Hello, my name is Jackathy, and this is my full, comprehensive, blown, girthy, big dick guide of being a tank in both PvP and PvE in Throne and Liberty. By all means, feel free to write in the comments any other tips and tricks or suggestions that you may have for others to learn. We're going to cover everything from the best weapon combination, all the active and passive skills, which ones I personally use in a PvP and PvE perspective. We'll touch on their skill specializations, the guardians, the masteries, the base attributes, the gear progression, the full-blown rotation in both PvP and PvE, and overall some miscellaneous stuff like these settings that I even use. So this is a doozy. This is a big one. Let's get started. By far, without question, the best weapon combination for tanking in both PvP and PvE in Throne and Liberty is the Sword and Shield paired with Greatsword. The reason the Sword and Greatsword is the best combination for tanking is that you can increase your damage output, but also the damage output of your team by making enemies shocked or weakened. This weapon combination also allows you to build for great survivability, not only yourself, but for your team, and does not have to make sacrifices to your overall damage output. This combination also ensures that you have the highest HP and max health, high AoE damage, and extremely high burst. The Greatsword opens up with some amazing mobility. For me personally, this is also the funnest playstyle, but most importantly, it allows for control. Control in your ability to be mobile, control in your ability to provide aggro, control in your ability to make your team do more damage, control in your ability to peel your enemies off your players so that they can do high sustained damage. Now, you will be main-handing the Sword and Shield and having the Greatsword as an offhand. Keep in mind that your Greatsword or offhand passives will still stay active even when you're using Sword and Shield. Now, negatives with this combination is your CDs are long, you are extremely reliant on heavy attack, you also are extremely susceptible to CC, and you do have low self-sustain. If you are to play around with different weapon combinations, it is mandatory that the Sword and Shield is chosen. Nevertheless, this combination makes you an absolute menace for everyone on the field, and you certainly can't be ignored. You are a walking juggernaut that frontlines and provides a ton of utility to your party. Simply put, with its high defenses, high HP, high damage, high survivability, high utility, the ability to make your team stronger through weakening and shocked states, and the fact that it's easy to play certainly ranks the Sword and Great Shield as the best option for tank in both PvE and PvP in Throne and Liberty. Now let's begin talking about all the active and passive skills that these weapon combinations offer. Strategic Rush. You will charge forward and deal damage. It has a high chance to push enemies back. This spell should be used at all times. It is extremely great in providing you control in a dungeon situation, helping to group mobs, or otherwise helping to stun enemies in PvP or to peel for your teammates. Precision Dash allows you to dash towards enemies, dealing base damage, and for any enemy you hit up to 5 targets, allows you to increase heavy attack chance. Using the specialization Bind furthermore lets you bind the enemies in place, granting you a ton of control in PvE scenarios, or otherwise helping again to peel for your teammates. This works as a wonderful gap closer right at the start of any engagement, and can certainly help to catch enemies that are often elusive. Devastating Smash is your third gap closer. It allows you to lunge at enemies and stun all targets within a 5-meter radius. This is more highly effective in PvP engagements, won't be used so much as to start an engagement, but rather during one, where stunning enemies buys much time for lengthy combos or otherwise, again, helping to peel for your teammates. Guillotine Blade is your bread and butter burst big dick damage. It does increase damage against prone or shocked targets. Furthermore, it has a chance to decrease the amount of incoming heals on that target as well. You can set this ability so that it charges, granting 100% additional damage. This is absolutely an ability you will have in your arsenal and will be an integral part to your damage output and often comboed, especially in a PvP scenario, as the charge time can be quite lengthy, being susceptible to being blocked or otherwise interrupted. Furthermore, when you specialize in this skill, you have a chance to do AoE damage as well. Death Blow is a great single target ability that does additional damage against any bound, sleeping, shocked, or stunned targets. Death Blow functions like the baby counterpart of Guillotine. This is certainly useful as a overall greatsword DPS build, but provided you're a tank and just the overall utility that some of the other spells combine, we will not be taking this. A Shot at Victory slams the target with the sword, dealing damage, and also increases the damage done by your sword and shield. Now, most of your damage is bursty because the skills are based on the greatsword, and you will not so much be using damage spells based off sword and shield. So the increased damage by 20% does not apply, and for that reason, I do not use this spell. Valiant Brawl, you attack 3 times. If there are other enemies in the skill's range, the attacks are spread out between different enemies, and the final attack will hit your target. If the attacks are spread out, the final attack deals extra damage. This is an excellent filler spell that is also great at generating aggro. Shield Strike deals damage to an enemy, has a fairly small cooldown, so like Valiant Brawl, this will be very much a bread and butter skill as a filler used for sustained damage. Specializing in this can also grant AoE. This also synergizes very well with Counter Barrier, one of your main defensive abilities. Furthermore, Shield Strike's melee heavy attack chance grows with your shield block chance, making this very powerful that synergizes with the rest of your toolkit. Gaia Crash slams your greatsword, causing an area of effect damage, very useful for AoE engagements or otherwise increased AoE damage. Modifying this skill also can grant increased attack speed. Devastating Tornado is a standard slash that does AoE damage, also increasing your movement speed. Honestly, based on all the gap closers and utility spells that you have like Chain Hook, it is not so difficult to stay glued on individuals, so the increased movement speed is not needed. And the damage for this, honestly, is subpar. Willbreaker is a powerful AoE ability, but what makes it really good is that it applies Weaken on all targets that it hits, thereby decreasing melee, ranged, and magic defense on the targets that you hit. Witty Strike deals damage upwards to 3 targets, and most importantly, recovers mana per target hit. Now, based on your gear, and more specifically your passive skills, mana isn't really an issue, especially in PvP encounters that don't last very long. Furthermore, most dungeons have bonfires you can rest at, so the increased mana is irrelevant here and not used widely. For this reason, I do not use the spell. Annihilating Slash is another spin to win. When the target is weakened, it increases damage. Furthermore, for every target hit, it lowers its cooldown. Annihilating Slash certainly has an application out in the open world where you do have a ton of mob density. The AoE damage is quite weak. I would not use this for PvP or dungeon encounters, but it can certainly apply in the open world. One of the best utility skills you have is Stunning Blow. This is your stun. Not only does it deal some damage, but it has a chance to stun your target over a duration of time. This is an excellent ability to chain your combos. If the target is immune to stun, like bosses in dungeons, you instead will shock them, increasing the damage of your entire team. Now in PvP, this will most likely be used to set up a combo of abilities for burst damage. With Strategic Rush, Devastating Smash, and Precision Dash, you certainly have more than enough abilities to peel for your targets. So again, this will primarily be used to combo your burst damage. Now, Ascending Slash does some base damage, but its primary application will be for PvP. When a target is bound, slept, or stunned, you have an 80% chance to knock that opponent down. This extends the duration of your combo and burst window. This is primarily used right after Stunning Blow. Fierce Clash does moderate damage. Most importantly, it has a chance to push your enemies away. Any enemies that are pushed against a wall will be stunned. You can certainly make a case to use this over Strategic Rush. That being said, you typically want to stay close to your enemies rather than giving them the ability to walk away. This could technically be used as a great peeling tool, but you have better skills in your arsenal for that. It's why I personally do not use this skill. Chain Hook is an amazing utility skill, both in PvP and PvE. In PvE, this functions by pulling in any ranged mobs, thereby clumping groups together and having more control. In a PvP application, this will certainly be used for anyone trying to escape from you, acting as a gap closer, or otherwise aiding you to peel for your teammates. Provoking Roar is your taunt. You will taunt enemies within 3 meters of you, forcing them to direct their attacks towards you, and this effect lasts longer against monsters. Now, obviously, you will not be using this in PvP, but this certainly helps to increase the control that you have within a dungeon, allowing you to pull more mobs and keeping them on you. Counter Barrier increases your shield block chance for a few seconds. When you invade an attack or perform a shield block, you counter attack, dealing damage. This should highly be used on you during windows where you are brawling with someone, and not so much when they're obviously stunned and incapable of hitting you. This is a great application for both PvP and PvE and should be used at all times. Da Vinci's Courage is an excellent skill that not only helps you, but your team by increasing max health, health regen, and attack speed for every party member within a medium radius around you. This is highly effective, should be used at all times within a PvP and PvE scenario, and it is best used before any start to an engagement in PvP, or otherwise any engagements that cause large AoE damage or burns to the rest of your team. Blood Devotion only really has an application in PvE and only in certain encounters. You can essentially transfer 40% of incoming damage onto yourself. Now, at the time of this recording, there are limited use cases for this. The top that comes to mind is the Temple of Slaughter, where he launches fireballs at people. You can certainly target the individual and have that damage come to you. That being said, raids are not difficult, and until we see raids where this type of transfer of damage is required and unavoidable, this will not be used. Stalwart Bastion is a great defensive skill, reducing damage reduction for all team members in its radius. This certainly has applications during some PvE encounters where bosses do a significant amount of damage, like the Temple of Slaughter or in the Cave of Destruction. This also can have a very wide application in massive scale PvP encounters, although because of its long cooldown, it is not so highly praised in short PvP incursions out in the open world or in arena. Immortal Pride is a straight buff that increases your max health. Now, because this doesn't help to increase the max health of your teammates and only yourself, there are other better defensive skills you can use. Furthermore, for the ability for your gear and traits and your attributes to level your max health as well, and the fact that that is permanent, whereas this only applies for 6 seconds, this would only be used against, again, very high burst windows, and there is just simply better defensive skills you can use. In regards to your block skills, you only have 2. From the Great Sword, you get Iron Point Parry. This block essentially acts as a counterattack. It also increases your skill damage boost and also has a chance to stun or shock the target. Iron Point Parry can also increase magic melee and ranged heavy attack chance, but providing that most people start to build towards endurance, this becomes less effective and hit chance becomes less important because people are not so much building into evasion. The sword and shield block is called Shield Survival Technique. When you block an attack, you can not only generate health, but also create a shield equal to 14% of your max health. Furthermore, blocking an attack can also increase the damage reduction. Not only this, but the shield survival technique does also provide base damage that can stack up to 3 times, essentially acting as a counterattack. Tit for tat, the shield survival technique is just the more preferred block skill to use. The reason I choose shield survival technique over Iron Point Parry, both in PvP and PvE, is simply based on the fact that it scales better. And the reason it scales is that it scales on your max health. Now, your passives and your gear all work towards building that max health. This allows you to stay alive longer. This allows you to be the frontline juggernaut that you were meant to be. Now let's talk about the Great Sword passive skills. Robust Constitution. It is a massive increase in max health and health regen. This should be used with absolutely any build in any encounter, both PvP and PvE. Vital Force increases your magic melee and ranged hit chances, as well as your skill damage boost and stun chance. And because how vital hit chances in this game and how low of a hit chance you have in the early stages of the game, this should always be used. Cold Warrior increases magic melee and ranged heavy attack chances against shocked or stunned targets. It also increases magic melee and ranged critical hit chances. This is quite self-explanatory. Your whole build is based on shocking or stunning your enemies. Anything related to heavy attack chance or critical hit chance is absolutely broken. This should 100% be used at all times. Victor's Morale. When you deal damage with skills, restores mana and health. This only works with direct damage skills. Now, the amount of mana you have is entirely dependent on the type of content you're doing. Whether you're doing dungeons, whether you're farming in the open world, whether you're in arena, there is different applications for needing a high amount of mana or needing a high amount of mana regen. Furthermore, this skill will also depend on your just general progression of your character. If you find that you are running out of mana in a dungeon run, then this would highly be useful, just based on quality of life, so you don't have to sit down and fucking go on the bonfires all the time. In arena, if you find that you are tanky and unkillable, and if you find yourself running out of mana before you die, this is certainly a good passive to have. So it entirely depends on whether you are running out of mana or not, and the content that you are doing. Raging Frenzy increases skill damage boost when there are 3 or more targets. Certainly a good application to use this in a open world setting. Barbarian's Dash. When you use a mobility or movement skill, it increases your movement speed for a small duration of time. Now, because of your overall toolkit and the gap closers available to you, this isn't so useful. Indomitable Armor has a low chance to increase damage reduction for a few seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. This is a great passive, and for me, I equip this at all times. Moving on to the Sword and shield passive skills. Skillful evasion increases your magic and ranged evasion, and additionally increases the magic melee and ranged evasion for any targets that are provoked. So highly useful in PvE, not so useful in PvP, especially when surrounded by melee. Resilient Mind, successfully evading or blocking an attack restores mana and health. Resilient Mind, same thing applies here. If you're in scenarios where you're running out of mana based on the content you're doing, you can certainly make an application to equip this. In a PvP setting, when the meta is entirely based on CC and one-shotting, this won't be entirely used, although the PvE application certainly applies, as there are a lot of mechanics in which you are defending against. Aegis Shield increases defense by 6 for every 1% of shield block chance. It is a very, very good passive skill and should be used at all times. Spectrum of Agony. Damaging a provoked target deals bonus damage to your other provoked targets. Now, this goes without saying, but the application here is solely focused on PvE. The taunt has specializations where you could increase its damage and essentially provide this passive itself, and for me there are just simply better and other passives to use, so I personally don't use this one. Gerard's Patience. Each successful dodge or shield attack block increases all CC resistance for a few seconds. This can be stacked up to 10 times. Due to how important collision resistance is, or CC resistance, or how highly dependent CC is, especially in PvP, this is certainly one I use at all times. Morale Boost. Colliding a target decreases the remaining cooldowns of all skills by 14%. This can stack up to 3 times. The lower the cooldown of your skills, the more that you can use them. This is highly beneficial, especially in PvP encounters or very high burst encounters, and not so good for long sustained fights where you won't have the mana for this. However, this paired with Resilient Mind or Victor's Morale can certainly synergize. Impenetrable improves your melee, ranged, and magic defense. Very, very good. Should always be used. The first build you see here is very much focused on PvE tanking. This is very good when you're doing your open dungeons or any peaceful open world bosses. You still have high mobility with strategic rush as well as precision dash. You can protect yourself and the team with Da Vinci's Courage and Counter Barrier. When you are pulling a significant amount of mobs, you can pull Chain Hook to group them all together, then apply Weaken with Will Barrier, and then of course Stunning Blow for incapacitating targets, or otherwise applying Shock for increased damage, Provoking Roar in order to taunt and have greater control, and then Guillotine Blade as well as Gaia, Piercing Strike, and Cruel Smite for damage. Again, a lot of the damage and the specializations are built towards more of an AoE type of playstyle. Now, you can certainly make a case for swapping Chain Hook out for Stalwart Bastion on, again, fights where you really need that damage reduction. This is more prevalent in fights such as Lassoon in the Cave of Destruction or King Chimeras in Roaring Temple, where they do have very high damage burst windows that you would like to protect against. You can certainly make a case also for Stalwart Bastion when you're doing very large PvE or PvP encounters. But overall, this build, I feel, provides the most tankiness, the most ability to increase your party's damage, just greater control, greater mobility, and a lot of the abilities like Cruel Smite, Piercing, all have increased aggro, which is very nice. For my PvP build, I swap out the Taunt and I add Devastating Smash. Having the ability to have a third gap closer is extremely nice in locking people down. You can certainly make a case of swapping Devastating Smash for perhaps Death Blow, but honestly, your job in PvP as a tank is more, again, peeling enemies off your players, letting them do the damage, making sure they stay alive, and stun locking enemies to prevent doing damage to your team. So this is what this build is really focused for. I do have a PvP build that's more centered around DPS Greatsword, but again, that is outside the scope of this video. I also sub out Will Breaker for Ascending Slash because, again, I feel like it provides very good utility in stun locking enemies in their place. Otherwise, you can look into subbing Stalwart Bastion if you are, again, in large-scale PvP incursions instead of the Ascending Slash. Abilities I never use, again, Blood Devotion due to its limited use cases, a Shot of Victory due to the fact that my DPS output is largely based on the Greatsword skills, the Immortal Pride, again, because it's just a self-buff and not a buff for my team. Fierce Clash I don't use because I want to remain sticky on the target. Another skill I never use is Devastating Tornado. There's simply just better AoE damage skills available, and the increased to movement speed isn't really necessary when you have so many gap closers available to you. Witty Strike I never use, again, based on the fact that your passive skills are more than enough to generate mana that you may be missing, and if you are in PvP, those incursions or those encounters tend to be short as you do die, and therefore I don't find this to be worthwhile. Now, in regards to Deathblow, you can certainly make the case in swapping out Gaia Smash for Deathblow to increase that single target pressure. Oftentimes, though, I find in open PvP or where there is a ton of groups that individuals tend to stack together, maybe not so much in arena, but for open world bosses that are in conflict or just activities that are in conflict in the open world, I find that the increased AoE damage is better here. If I'm in the open world just grinding mobs, I'll probably sub out Stunning Blow and Ascending Slash for Annihilating Slash and Will Breaker. As you can see, the skills I always use are the Strategic Rush, Valiant Brawl, Shield Strike, Gaia Crash, although again that can be subbed for Death Blow, Guillotine Blade, Devastating Smash, Stunning Blow, Chain Hook, Counter Barrier, Da Vinci's Resolve, and Precision Dash. In regards to passives, I definitely do like using Victor's Morale because I do find that I spam my abilities a lot and that I'm running out of mana when I'm doing any PvE content, so this just helps me become more mana rich. In regards to PvP, I do like swapping out the mana generation in favor of CC resistance, as well as the cooldown reduction from Moral Boost. If I really find that I'm running out of mana, specifically regards to open world grinding, I will add in Resilient Mind instead of Skillful Evasion. Starting off with skill specializations, please take a moment and pause the video and review the nodes and skill specializations that I have for both tanking as well as PvP. There are minor changes that I would make based on these circumstances. From a PvE perspective, any improvement in aggro is definitely encouraged, whether that's within Cruel Smite, whether that's within Stunning Blow, whether that's through Piercing Strike. I want to be able to apply aggro to most of my attack-based AoE abilities so that I have greater control. Chain Hook is really good in increasing its skill distance so that you can get any ranged mobs and not have to move the whole pack. Reduced cooldown of Counter Barrier, Provoking Roar. Having this on a reduced cooldown is exceptional. Any reduction in cooldown or AoE damage on Guillotine Blade. And then Will Breaker, having it being a 360-degree slash, because again, you are clumping a lot of mobs together. Being able to also apply evasion decrease so that my teammates can hit their attacks, and any increased attack speed from the Gaia Crash. Strategic Rush, I do like to widen the range or the width. That way I can push more of the grouped mobs into the wall. So ultimately, that's what these skill specializations in PvE center towards. In PvP, things certainly change up. You're not going to be putting any points into aggro. Obviously, the player can choose who they'd like to attack. In PvP, where I'd rather prioritize my points are in any increased damage that you get after a skill is used, making sure my spells do AoE damage, any cooldown reductions, I do also enjoy having a charge on the death blow as well as guillotine blade for more damage. And again, from a defensive aspect, making sure cooldowns are reduced and then increasing the instant healing, let's say, from the Da Vinci's Courage, and overall quality of life, like increasing the skill distance of both the chain hook or the precision dash. So it's all on the screen. Just again, feel free to copy the highlighted nodes. It should be quite self-explanatory. In regards to weapon mastery, let's start with sword and shield. You will be leveling the collision tree all the way full, and then leveling the provoke encounter all the way to impregnable stance. The reason I'm not putting points into the boss tree is that I very much am more oriented towards all the content that this game has to offer. So I do a lot of PvP, and this middle tree doesn't provide any benefits to that, aside from some minor hit chance or stun resistance or max health. The collision tree simply provides everything a grown man needs, such as max health, hit chance, the ability to improve your collision chance, as well as your collision resistance, which is very important based on how the current meta is in PvP. Simply put, at this time, bosses in open world or dungeons simply don't do enough damage in order to warrant any endurance or damage reduction. In regards to the greatsword, you will be leveling the face-off tree to max, as well as leveling the incapacitate tree all the way up to complete stun. The reason the face-off tree is leveled all the way up to fierce glare is you certainly want to take advantage of the additional 100 melee heavy attack chance, which complements very well to a more burst-like playstyle. Not to mention the increased attack speed, the skill damage boost, the melee critical chance. It is just an overall really, really good tree. In regards to the charge part of the tree, certainly there are some benefits in the damage reduction and health and evasion and, skill damage resistance that this provides. That being said, the sword and shield mastery trees more than compensate. Also, because we are building towards a very stun lock oriented build, the incapacitate tree certainly helps with that as well by increasing your stun chance and the stun duration, allowing you to incapacitate players more often. So again, more focus on the PvP side of things, but again, based on the state of PvE, it is more than sufficient in keeping you alive, and the extra defense that charge brings is not needed. For the Guardians, you're going to want to use the Green Ranger Eloin when you are doing PvP. I mean, the fact that you have an 80% chance to bind all enemies, and then those bind enemies increases the critical hit chance by 500. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. And then when you swap to tank, you are going to be using the Vampire Slayer Ezekiel, as that increases your defense by 400, deals damage over time based on your max health, and restores your health by 20% of damage dealt to the targets. So, very good tank all-arounder. For your base attributes, without taking any gear into account and simply using the points available to you at level 50, I recommend putting 30 in perception and 40 in strength in order to unlock those 3 bonuses. Towards the end game, you certainly have options. Some individuals like leveling strength to 60, perception to 40, and 30 plus dex. Again, that is going to be highly reliant on the gear that you have. Or you can do 50 strength, 35 dex, 30 wisdom, 40 perception, and finally some individuals even like going up to 70 strength for the max health. So definitely up to you, but again, that would definitely require, let's say, the Gargantuan Greatsword, right, from Adventus, as that gives a +8 strength, I believe. So, but these are typically the 3 base attributes you're looking for. So there's a lot of information and guides on gear progression, but I thought I would quickly walk through. So the first thing you're going to do, of course, is make your way to level 50, and as you do so, you will acquire uncommon gear or green gear through standard leveling, questing, and crafting. Then through standard leveling, questing, and crafting again, you are going to be given blue rare gear. By the end of the game, you should have every single blue gear piece that the game has provided you. This is just done simply through the main quest. And at the end of the quest, you will be given a purple chest or rare gear. Now, I made the mistake of holding on to my mats in fear that I would waste them. Don't. Upgrade that uncommon gear to +6, which is its max. The reason being you want to level this gear to max is the uncommon green +6 will transfer to blue rare gear +3, and then the blue rare gear can level up to +9, which will then upgrade to purple rare gear +6, and this saves you a ton of mats. So at this point, you're level 50, you have one purple chest, the rest are blues. The key now is to upgrade this rare gear to +9. Another mistake I did is I paid no attention to traits until I got purple gear. That is a mistake. For me, I thought it was an endgame activity similar to enchanting, but the reason why you want to go and unlock those traits and level those traits is because when you transfer that gear, let's say to a +9 blue to a +6 purple, you will gain blessing through that transfer. Blessing will allow you to increase the chances you get from unlocking traits or otherwise leveling them up. We will talk about what traits are best for which slot. You're going to focus primarily on building melee evasion at the start, and then you are going to swap to endurance late in the game. The reason you want to focus on evasion first is at the start of the game, people's hit chance is low. Evasion only comes into play when the evasion is higher than the hit. If the hit is higher, then the evasion stat is worthless. So towards the end game, as people build up their hit, it becomes more difficult to build an evasion focused build. This is again very much geared towards PvP. PVE, honestly, I checked the database, I scoured everywhere, I couldn't find what the break even of, bosses, hit chance, or evasions were, but people typically say aim for 800 hit and for 1,000 evasion. So you've got all your blue, you've got your purple, right? You're going to do all the end game activities. You're going to do your dungeons, your open dungeons, you're going to do your contracts, you're going to do open world bosses, you're gonna do raids with your guild, and through that and crafting, you will be gaining your epic pieces. Now, there is a ton of RNG involved with that, so you'll not necessarily always get the purples you want, but there is definitely a ton of iron plate armor, if you will, that is more suitable for you. So what I will be doing is leaving a link to a website. This website has a ton of build and also gearing options. I'm not going to plaster, and make this video another hour long by walking through every armor piece. So link in the description below, and those are some of the pieces you should be going for. So as you acquire these purple pieces, again, you're going to transfer that +9 rare gear to an epic +6. And then again, gain blessings through those traits. The traits will be removed, but again, you're increasing the chances of leveling the traits on the purple gear a lot faster. The way you unlock traits is you either find the exact same weapon with a different trait, or you simply use your trait unlock stones to unlock the trait. Once the trait is unlocked, the way you level them is by finding an equivalent weapon or armor. So let's say if it's boots, any type of boots with that same trait, you can then enchant, and you have a chance to level that tier of the trait. Ultimately, you're going to acquire pieces, you're going to level your epic gear to +9, and then you're going to want to unlock those traits. Now, it can become very, very expensive to trait your purple gear. So I would advise at this point to certainly, when you're transferring from blue to purple gear, that you definitely keep an eye on what would be ultimately BIS or an alternative BIS. because max health in some pieces can cost upwards to over 1,000 lucent or more. And that is the general progression of your gear. Hopefully that made sense. I will leave the exact gear pieces that some builds use in the description below. And at that point, you can simply research and or otherwise click how to acquire in the game to find where those pieces are. Some, again, are in open world bosses. Some are in just running dungeons. Some can be found in random drops when you're doing your open dungeons, right? Some of them you can craft. You know, some of them are gained through arena points, right? Like, it's really up to you to do that research and find out what is the best pieces for you. Here are the recommended traits per item slot. Now, this is ordered in priority. For your weapons, you want to have heavy attack chance, critical hit chance, and hit chance. For all your armor pieces, like your chest, your helmet, your boots, your hands, you want max health, then melee evasion, ranged evasion, and then mana regen if one of the epic pieces you're going for doesn't have one of those 3 traits. For your cloak, your bracers, your belt, max health, collision resistance, skill damage resistance, and then debuff duration. And then for your rings and for your neck, you have max health, skill damage boost, buff duration, and weaken chance. If you're ever curious what the best traits are, honestly, just look them up in the auction house. Typically, the meta will tell you that the highest lucent trait is the best one, right? That's a very good pulse check to see what the meta is. But absolutely, as you can see, max health is absolutely broken and should be achieved on any build, both PvP and PvE. Now, in order to get traits, again, you could extract traits from gear. So for an example, if you have a weapon and it has a critical hit chance, but you find the exact same weapon with heavy attack chance, you can open up that slot and gain heavy attack chance as well. If you find the same weapon with heavy attack chance, you have a 100% chance to gain a tier from leveling heavy attack chance, right? If it's another weapon that's not the same weapon, or it's blue or green, you know, you'll have a percentage chance of getting that upgrade, right, when you enchant it, but it won't be 100%. But if you fail, you gain blessings, which is why I recommend unlocking those traits and leveling them while you're still in blues. Not to mention, you'd be surprised how much of a current power rating you'll get simply by even upgrading, right, your blue traits. I mean, you could easily hit 2.5 sitting all in blues. Anyway, I hope that cleared that part up. So for food and consumes, you can actually stack them. You can stack attack or defense with a remedy, a utility, and miscellaneous. Now for attack, if you're doing PvP, I recommend the roasted honey apple. For PvE, the grilled crown fish. Now, if you decide to choose defense instead, the terror bird stew is good. For remedies, the precious purification stone is amazing. It gets you out of CC. You could use that first and then use the attack remedy, which is what I would prefer. The abundance fruit and mastery report, those can be stacked with the miscellaneous for extra solent or mastery XP. And then for utility, I would probably recommend the vegetable stir fry, or if you're doing more DPS PvP oriented, the scorpion tail fritters. Up to you, just remember, you have to choose either attack or defense, as those do not stack, and then one of either remedy, one utility, and one miscellaneous. Now, again, miscellaneous is largely for farming. So in this case, right, if I wanted to do PvP tanking, I would probably choose the roasted honey apple, precious purification stone with attack when I'm doing my big dick burst, and with that, add scorpion tail fritters, right? If I'm doing PvE content, I'm probably going to do the grilled crown fish with the attack remedy, but I'll probably save that for more important things like PvP, and then the vegetable stir fry. If I'm farming, I'm probably going to do the grilled crown fish with the abundance fruit or mastery, whichever I'm grinding, and then choose either crab or golden depending on what I'm trying to farm, and then the vegetable stir fry. So as you can see, you can choose 1 remedy, 1 utility, 1 miscellaneous, or 1 attack or defense, right? And based on what you're doing would be the consumes that you decide to choose. Hopefully that cleared that up. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the live portion of the video. Before we begin, my in-game name is Onon because I own. That's O-N-O-N. Anybody feel free to add me and maybe we can dungeon it up. Or if you're on the Quack server, we can do other endgame content. With that said, I'm going to run through my settings and the rotation for both PVE and PVP. So without further ado, let us begin. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go and play on classic mode if you are not doing that already. Now, it should be quite self-explanatory, but classic mode just gives you more control. It gives you more visibility. It is just better to use, both in a PvE and PvP perspective. I mean, let's talk about this. Not only do you have more control over, I believe, the field of view, but you can hand select the targets you want to focus on. This is obviously ideal for any situations, right? If you're tanking and you want to pull the ranged mob, right, towards you, right, it's going to be very difficult to accomplish that in action mode. Because what happens if I want to select the dummy right behind this one? You have to be very selective. It's just so much more difficult. What if I want to select the dummy to my right? You want to pivot your whole camera? No, right? You want to be able to have visibility wherever you want, but still have control, right? Over where you want to do or what you want to do, right? So in this case, classic mode is the only option you should be considering. And if you're not, well, get good and learn how to use it. Now moving on, certainly pause the video and copy my settings. I honestly don't know what's default or not at this point in time. I do like to auto move when interacting with a selected target or when that target is out of range, or using beneficial skills on a friendly target when they're out of range. This makes it so, let's say I have this guy targeted, I want to charge Guillotine Blade, it's automatically doing the movement and targeting for me. If we go back, I like to toggle the aim skills. This has it so I don't have to click on the ability twice. I can hold on to where I want to go, and regardless who I'm targeting, right? Let's say I'm targeting this guy, I want to go here. Well, I can pivot here and then pivot here directly, right? So this just lets it so that I'm clicking less and that I have more control over the aimed skills and that I'm not clicking it twice. This is really good if we go down. Anytime I'm in PvE content or I'm not doing PvP, I like to use Simplify All. If I am in PvP, I set this to user settings, and please take a moment to copy this down. Obviously, I have my Amatoys hidden, especially the Amatoys of others. If you have this on, you are a fucking psychopath. Target selection. So when I'm in PvE, I have this search by distance. This is all defaulted off. And the same goes down here. When I'm in PvP, I set these two on. And I set attacking players, hostile guild feud, and hostile players as priority. I obviously in a PvP incursion, or I'm in the open world PvPing in conflict zones or activities, I don't want to tab target and accidentally hit enemies, right? NPCs or mobs. I want to hit the people that are fucking trying to kill me. So I will always, you know, set this off and on depending if I'm just PvE or PvP. By far the most important setting you can have is the auto target nearest enemy when attacking without a target, right? This makes it so if I am near an enemy, I can quickly pivot to my skills and it will automatically target that individual. This is just very essential so that you don't always have to click on the individual, right, to start the engagement. So, right, whoever I'm closest with is who I'm going to start attacking with. Now, this works really well with the second skill that I have, right, which is cancel target by clicking the ground. What if I want to pivot, right? What if I want to pivot? I simply click the ground to on target, similar to how other MMOs work, and then I can change my direction, and then, oh, well, there you go. It targets the nearest enemy when I'm not targeting. So being able to click on the ground to untarget that person is, to me, just gives me that control. And these work very well together, right? So again, right, you can move here, pivot here, click on the ground, right? I can go here, automatically a target now the person next closest to me. This just gives you more control. In terms of other settings, again, this is going to be on for PvE. Then I swap this for PvP. So as you know, now that I'm swapped, if I target someone, right, select a valid target. It's not going to try to target someone that is, right? I can't use Guillotine Blade because it's not going to target someone because they're mobs and they're not PvP. So when I'm in PvP, I only want to focus on, again, people that are attacking me, any hostile guilds, feud players, or hostile players, right? And then revert back when I'm in PvE. Everything should be defaulted at this point. But here you go. Have a chance to copy that down. But everything should be defaulted. It's really preference, right? UI. I like to set everything small. Notifications, all this sound. Shortcuts or keybinds. The one thing I will say is you don't need to keybind basic attack because the game automatically does that for you. So I don't have this binded, and then I swap my defense skill for mouse 4. But keybinds are self-explanatory. Anyway, I think we can now pivot to the rotation aspect of the guide. Alrighty, let's quickly cover the basic rotation, and we'll start first with PvE. Obviously, I already walked through what skills I use and why, so if you skip to this part, feel free to revert back to the video. But nevertheless, it's pretty much the same, right? I typically will gather mobs up first, right? So you're going to be running around. They're going to be trying to chase you. Hopefully your team is behind you and they're not attacking or healing, right? As the mobs approach, I like to precision to apply the heavy attack chance. I'll then pull anyone that is outside. I will then taunt to buy me time. And then what I'm going to do is kind of reposition myself to where there is a wall. That way I can strategic rush everyone inside. At that point, I will use Will Breaker to apply more aggro and weaken. Then I'll use my abilities for AoE, right? And then once they're out of the stun, I will apply my counter barrier because, you know, as you're moving around, right, and doing all this stuff and then pulling them in, they're not really attacking you. Then they're stunned. So at that point, right, only when they come out of that stun will I use my defensives. So let's go over the rotation again, right? We're going to group up mobs. Your team is staying close. They're hopefully not aggroing. You're going to select the guy furthest away. As those enemies are approaching you, you're going to precision dash. Go here, right? Start then grouping and glumping people up. Then you're going to select the guy range that are far. You're going to taunt. You're going to wrap around and position yourself against a wall so you can push people there. They're now stunned. You're going to be doing your Will Breaker and then your high damage aggro abilities, right? Right? Now, then once they come out of the stun, you're going to do, you know, your counter barrier, because why would you do that move if they're out? And then you're just kind of rinsing, repeating. Then you're going to assess what's happening, right? If there is another ranged mob you need to pull him in. If you need to, again, charge to another guy that you don't have aggro against, do so. And while all enemies will then start to approach you, you command where people are going to burst and fight down. Don't worry about the ranged and that it has to be in their bubble or sphere of damage. That's their job. So again, right, you're going to pivot here. You're going to go here. You're going to group them up in the middle. Now these guys are attacking you. Now you're going to bear this in. You're going to taunt. You're going to move around and you're going to strategic rush them against the wall. Then you're going to do your high abilities. They're coming out of stun. You're going to do Will Break or counter barrier, right? And now you're going to assess. Team needs damage. I need damage. More damage. Any mobs that need here, right? Any mobs that need a stun. Control, right? I need to go here. Right, I need to pull this in. So you're just always just going to try to move around, stun lock enemies, You're going to pull people in that are far. You're going to taunt so it buys you time. You're going to strategic rush always against the wall so they're stunned. Will breaker for aggro. And this for aggro. If they're out of the stun, you're going to pop, right? You know what I mean? It's a dance. You're doing a dance and you're applying your aggro offensive skills to enemies that may not have it. There you go. You're kind of tilting back and forth. Again, bash against the wall. You know, now they're all on you, right? Dodge abilities, right? You know, taunt, right? It's going to be self-explanatory, guys. Now, that's kind of the song and dance. But you always want to pull people that are far. Once you've sustained initial aggro after the initial stun lock, you want to move around and go to enemies that, right, that don't have aggro. And then build aggro on them. Or if there's someone that, you know, someone is chasing someone, but you've used your abilities. Chain hook is off cooldown. Run and stun. Peel for your teammates. And that basically, that's it, folks. For PvP, it is entirely dependent on the situation. But kind of same thing applies. You want to group people up. You want to peel for your players, right? So, right, at the start of an engagement, what you typically want to do instead, right, because it's not so obvious, they're not mobs, is you want to essentially counter barrier and Da Vinci's Courage prior to any engagement. Now, I like to, right, always bind the target first. If someone is trying to get my teammate, I'll pull, then I'll look for that strategic rush to put him against any wall. If not, then what you want to do is use your devastating smash. Now, what I can do is buy time for Gaia's smash, and if you want to stun lock someone, you're gonna first do, right, stunning blow, do damage, and then you're gonna follow up with descending slash. In PvP, the main thing you want to do is you don't want to spam stunning blow and ascending slash right away, because you have a good, right, 3.5 seconds for stunning blow. So anytime you want to lock someone down, right, you're doing your stunning blow, your abilities, and then, right, ascending slash right at the end of that 3.5 seconds to knock them down. At that point, you can then do, right, guillotine blade. Now, the most important ability is actually your survival technique. And the hardest part to get right, and believe me, I don't have this right, is that you want to bait their big attacks, like their stun, right? And you want to block it. So what do most players do? They panic. They spam their abilities. So you can absolutely make the case to charge in, stun another, and then immediately block. Most of the time, they're going to unload all their bullshit on you, right? And in which that case, you can then start unloading your bullshit. Pull someone in, stun, use your abilities, wait, then ascending slash. Now they're fully locked down and knocked down, right? There you go. Then they get up, you push them against the wall, right? Then they get up again, then you block, right? You know what I mean? And then block maybe in between these abilities too. And then when you don't have any abilities and they're all on cooldown and you can't stun lock anyone, that is when you want to use your counter barrier and your Da Vinci's Courage. Again, at the start of an engagement or once you're done all your abilities, right? Here, stunned, Gaia crash. Now I'm going to ascending slash, guillotine blade. He's still breathing. He's getting up. Push him against the wall. Do your attacks. He's getting up. Stun him again. And now you have nothing, right? So now you're going to peel for your player. Now you can use your, right, defensives. So hopefully that, you know, makes sense. Things adjust, things change. But again, if I could say anything, it's prolongate your stun locks as much as possible. Stunning blow, damage, wait, ascending slash, wait, damage, strategic rush, stun, damage, devastating smash, damage. Now, again, you can not all of the time you're going to strategic rush someone against a wall. But so in this case, you can peel for your players, so they're not on your players. Oh, if they go towards your healer, pull them back, right? Stun them. Damage, right? Ascending slash, he's still knocked down, right? Bam, he's just getting up. No, you don't, right? We're going to knock your ass down again. And then most importantly, blocking during that time and trying to bait what you think will be their going. And most of the time, again, they're going to spam and unload all their cum when you charge and do an initial engagement, right? There, then you can go. So anyway, I hope that narrows down the rotation. Again, you can make the case to sub Stalwart Bastion, so the same thing would apply. Once your stun lock is done, right? Once your stun lock is done, once your counter barrier is up, and once your Da Vinci's Courage is up, then you can make the case for using the big dick, you know, defensive, either during the engagement, but most likely before you start the engagement. Anyway, hope that covers everything, folks. Anyway, that is it, folks. Oh my god, this took me forever. Thank you very much for those who watched the whole thing. Those that comment, please again, share your tips and tricks. I by no means am the best tank in the world. Fuck, I just wanted to show my passion for the game and for this particular class and build. Please subscribe, comment, share if this was helpful. Thank you very much, jack-offs. I will see you on the next one.